Now, one of the big challenges in innovation isn't about coming up with an idea or even developing it to the point of launch. It's scaling it, getting a large number of people to adopt it, growing the market. And that's a big challenge. But one of the recipes that might be worth trying is throwing a party. Once upon a time, this gentleman wanted to be a millionaire. In fact, by the time he was 30 was his life goal that he set himself. He didn't quite achieve it, but he wasn't far off. His name was Earl Tupper, and he had an interesting history. He'd invented various different gadgets and patented a few, so he learned a bit about being an entrepreneur. He didn't make much money, so eventually he took a job with DuPont as a chemist. And this was at the time when plastics were just beginning to take off, in the 1930s. He set up a company and began to grow his own business, making plastics, using the knowledge he'd gained through DuPont about the technology, but also about the market. And he was something of an alchemist. Basically, what Earl Tupper did was turn waste into gold. He took the waste from oil refineries, polyolefin, black sludge, and found a way of turning it into bright, colourful plastics, which he also added a rather useful feature to. Not just plastic containers, but using a lid, the idea for a sealable lid, which he took from the paint industry. But putting this together, he patented a plastic container with an airtight seal. And he named it after himself, Tupperware, which was wonderful. And you'd think a good idea that was as successful as that, it's going to speak for itself. It will automatically find its way into the market. But he was a good entrepreneur, experienced, and he realized he needed to test the market. So he ran focus groups, and generally the market testing was positive. People liked it. The pricing was right. And in fact, House Beautiful, one of the home influencing magazines, called it very well priced. It's fine art for 39 cents. So it seemed as if it ought to take off, and the department stores were very happy to take it on board. But there were some limitations. In particular, people weren't necessarily ready just yet for plastics. Plastics were still in their infancy, and bringing them into the home, not sure. And this particular gadget with its funny seal, that's a little bit complex compared to the old glass jars people had. So there was some concern in the marketplace. But basically, the problem for Earl Tupper was, although he had a great product that many people thought in his market testing ought to be selling, it wasn't. And that's when he decided he might like to try an alternative approach. And what he did was to take on a distributor called Stanley Home Products. Now, the name tells it all. These were door-to-door salesmen and women who basically were taking various household items, brushes and cleaning devices, and Tupperware. But they were experimenting with an interesting new model. In particular, their new model was to try and persuade some housewives to hold a party at which they would invite their friends and at which there would be a demonstration of some of the Stanley Home Products range, including Tupperware. One of their demonstrators was a woman called Brownie Wise, and she was rather good at the job, and she saw the potential in Tupperware. And what she did was to bring her skill to throwing the parties. And typically, a Tupperware party would involve Brownie Wise, you can see her in this picture here, doing a big show, but essentially in a party atmosphere. Essentially, nice food and drink, the chance behind closed doors to have a bit of a gossip, to enjoy yourself, and as part of the evening's feature, have a look at this new product. And she was a pretty good showwoman. What she did, amongst other things, was to fill it up with soup, seal the lid on a Tupperware container, and then throw the soup across the room so it landed on the floor. And you could almost hear the collective as people thought, oh my God, that's going to make a mess of the carpet. But of course it didn't. The seal held, and that was a very powerful moment for many of the watchers. this could be rather useful. That seal is probably valuable. I might have a look at this product. But the whole context of the party selling was something that Brownie Wise was really good at, and as a model, it took off. So much so that Earl Tupper began to take notice. He asked to see this woman who was having such successful sales, and the upshot of the interview he had with her was that he took her on as his marketing director. And what she did in the subsequent years was pioneer what we these days would call social marketing. Social marketing, essentially selling people to people. Now, one of the lessons we know about innovation is we trust people like us. And so the beauty of the model that Brownie Wise developed and pioneered was essentially people selling to others like them. She built the kind of pyramid so that a housewife who would host a party would then earn some commission. She might get some samples of Tupperware to keep, but she might also start to earn commission on sales that she generated. And she in turn might identify others who would become sales agent. The party plan, which now is very much underpinning social marketing, was born in the ideas of Brownie Wise. And she pioneered things like the annual sales conference and celebrations and training academies. She produced one of the world's first training videos. Long before the era of YouTube, she was behind trying to transmit the knowledge to newcomers who are going to be party hostesses, but basically trying to do that through the new medium of TV. So what was going on was essentially building on what we've learned around diffusion theory. Now, this man, Everett Rogers, told us a great deal in his many books around the theory of diffusion of innovation. What affects that S-curve in terms of how often or how soon do people adopt and how might we accelerate the adoption of something. What Brownie Wise did was put all of these kind of ideas into practice. And basically, if we were to summarize some of the key elements behind the success of that Tupperware model, it goes like this. Adoption of innovation is a social process. We trust people like us, and in particular, opinion leaders are the ones we tend to follow. These days we call them influencers, and they're on social media driving the adoption of many, many different products and services and lifestyles. What influencers particularly do is shape our perceptions. How do we actually see the innovation? See its advantages, its relative advantage, the complexity or lack of it, the ability to try things out, to see what's going on, and to see that it fits our world. But basically, adoption is a social process, and what Brownie Wise pioneered was mechanisms to mobilize that, which carries some powerful lessons for today's innovation managers. Did it work? Undoubtedly. Tupperware's sales rocketed, it became the dominant model, and the product is still around today. In fact, 2020 was its most successful year ever in terms of sales. So next time you open a piece of Tupperware, whether to have a drink or perhaps eat your lunch, you might spare a thought for Brownie Wise and Earl Tupper, and how the combination of those two very different knowledge sets, the one all around the technology and how to actually deliver a good product to market, the other how to mobilize adoption behavior in a positive way. I think that's a successful strategy for innovation.